Thanks, Mike.
Well, hello again. I'm Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce. We have another Focus Friday. This is presented by Novant Health, and we're going to hear from Mike Riley in just a little while. But I am going to shoot straight over to our 2023 Public Policy Chair, Jeff Tart, who's going to introduce our speaker today, because I think we are kind of pressed for time. So, Jeff?
Thanks, Bill. I have the honor and privilege of introducing the North Carolina Attorney General today. In full disclosure, I consider Josh not only a colleague, but a personal friend. He's just his background. A lot of people will know this, and we'll try to keep it brief, but he's a former state legislator, served in the Senate, used to sit beside him in committees. He's a two-term Attorney General. He's academically challenged. I mean, he's only got a Dartmouth undergrad degree and a Harvard law degree and another master's degree from Harvard, but you know, I guess that's the best you can do. But Josh has been a true public servant to the state. He's a friend to the citizens of North Carolina, and he has a wealth of knowledge on a lot of topics that he's in the middle of. I've asked the Attorney General if he would give us kind of an update, what's going on in his office, and then we'll have a few minutes after, hopefully, to join in a conversation on a follow-up on a few topics. So with that, Mr. Attorney General, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be with you. I certainly appreciate the invitation, and you are a wonderful colleague to serve with in this. And honestly, North Carolina would be a lot better off if there were more Jeff Tarts in public service. I'll tell you that. We are tackling a lot of issues that are affecting people here in North Carolina, and we're doing everything we can to move the ball forward and serve the constituents as best as we can. All across the state, families are reeling, communities are devastated from the opioid crisis. We all know that started with pills. It was drug companies essentially inundating communities with these prescription pills, making prescriptions to prescriptors that they were not, and they were very effective at treating pain. And we know that really neither of those things are particularly true. And then the second wave of the crisis was heroin, and now we're in the deadliest third wave, which is fentanyl. I have been working on this issue. I worked on it when we were together in the state Senate, along with you, Jeff. And we've been working on it since I got sworn in 2017 as AG. And this is an issue to get a lot of bipartisan cooperation on. We passed our mutual colleagues, Jeff, you remember Jim Davis, and of course Tom McGinnis, both of them Republican state senators. You, of course, Republican, I'm a Democrat. We were able to work together and enact legislation to combat the opioid crisis that was unanimous. That people saw this as a crisis affecting all North Carolinians, and let's take off our blue hat or our red hat and put on our North Carolina red and blue hat and solve problems. And the same thing with Republican Attorney General around. The Republican Attorney General of Tennessee was Herbert Slade. He and I were the two lead AGs for the whole country. The entire open to the distributors, to the pharmacy chains, to court to hold them accountable for the role that they played, because they were making money when all these pills were being sold, and were not doing what they should have done to reduce the distribution of them and really create the problem in the first place. And so we've won more than $55 billion from all of these companies all in. We just announced a settlement in principle with Kroger for its pharmacies from their drugs and their grocery stores for $1.3 billion last week. North Carolina's share is going to be about $1.5 billion when you put all of these deals together. And we did something that almost no other state did. We had 85% of the funds go to the local governments, because it's the counties where the rubber meets the road. They're the ones whose DSS, whose jails, whose public health departments, they're the ones who are dealing with it. They have the relationships with the locals. And therefore, they're the best position to respond. And we, a couple weeks ago, Johns Hopkins School of Public Health identifying North Carolina as one of the two best states in the country in terms of how we're using these funds, because we wanted the money to not only kind of take a pound of flesh out of the companies from doing wrong, to deter them from doing it again, but also with money to save lives. And that's what it fundamentally is about. We have a website called ncopioidsettlement.org because we want the public to know what their elected officials are doing with these funds. They're in a dedicated account. The county governments and the state can't spend it on other things other than fighting the opioid crisis. But we want folks to know, what did the Mecklenburg County Commissioners decide to do with its share of the money? What did the Cabarrus County Commissioners do? What did the Gaston County Commissioners? What did the Lincoln County Commissioners do? So that we can actually hold them accountable, because I firmly believe that officials make the best decisions when see on their actions. I can talk sexual assault kits, fentanyl in greater detail, but I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in.
All right, well, let's jump around. What do you think at this point in the opioid crisis can be done to continue to put a dent in this problem? And what's your thoughts going forward?
Sadly, we're at the deadliest moment in the deadliest drug epidemic in American history. I mean, we've lost over the last 2 years 100,000 lives to drug overdose in each of those years. Those are numbers, orders of magnitude more than ever before, substantially more than car crashes at this stage. In North Carolina, it's about 4,000 lives are being lost every year to drug overdose, and about 3/4 people have fentanyl in their systems. So what this incredible is attributable to is fentanyl, which is an opioid. And just to be clear, because there is prescription, it's a legitimate form that's used for intense breakthrough pain, usually people with cancer. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about fentanyl that's made by a full company in a lab. We're talking about fentanyl that is made in illicit labs, drug labs, usually in Mexico, using components acquired from China and then shipped across the border here. And we've got to get this. We have to do more interdiction, more capturing of these drugs. And I will say, it's not like the Biden administration isn't aware of this problem. They are capturing more at the border every year than any other year in record. It's incredibly small because it doesn't take much, incredibly potent. Just a few of sand is actually enough to kill a person if they ingest. So it's incredibly compact. It's very hard to get captured at the border, but we need to do that. We need to break up the drug traffic here in North Carolina. Ask the legislature to fund a fentanyl control unit of specialized prosecutors in my office to support locally, because complex, time-consuming cases to bring. Our colleague Tom McGinnis worked with our office passing a bill called the Stop Counterfeit Pill Act to make it clear that pill presses are contraband. They take the pill and make it look like it's OxyContin or something, then sell it as a fake brand drug. We've updated our crime, be more efficient and get at testing the drugs, and now the most common drug we find at the crime lab when we're testing evidence from crime scenes. All of that to attack supply. We've got to make it more expensive for these drugs on the street, but we're never going to win this thing if we don't address demand. And that's why this $1.5 billion that we won for North Carolina is so critical, because it goes to things and get to a better place where they don't buy this drug on the street that might kill them. And there are more people living in recovery in the United States that are active. So a lot of families are struggling with this. I mean, it hits home, but folks, that there is a chance that there will be a way for their loved one.
Josh, let me ask you this, and it's kind of tangential on the opioid thing. Is there an education component that's important? You mentioned, that a very small dose, if you will, or exposure to fentanyl is fatal. I mean, I saw a picture the other day in a educational seminar where they showed a penny and the amount of fentanyl would be like flour. If you were baking cookies and you got a little bit of flour under one fingernail, that's enough fentanyl to kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know if everybody realizes.
Yeah.
And how do we educate people against, the fake drugs you mentioned? Is that a component, or is it nobody pays attention? Any sense?
No, it is important. I mean, two levels of education. One is middle schoolers predominantly, but also high schoolers, to do everything we can to keep kids from using drugs, because people who struggle with substance use over life, they invariably start as, honestly, it's one of the reasons why North Carolina, the first state to the e-cigarette company, addicted to nicotine. And when you get addicted to nicotine, helping those neural ways of addiction in your brain, when you're a teenager, your brain's still being shaped, that affects your likelihood to be addicted to other drugs down the road. And so educating young people to keep them from starting, obviously very important, but people who use drugs need to understand that they may think, you know what, pot, or I'm going to buy cocaine. These are drugs that, I don't know, maybe they're not going to kill me, they're not good for me, but then you have no idea what you're taking at this point, because they're adulterating every drug in the drug distribution illegal market with fentanyl, because they're trying to get people addicted so that they become customers for life. And honestly, they don't care how long your life is. As long as you're buying from them, they don't care if it's a 3-month life or your life. Want to get you addicted. People who take drugs need to understand you have no idea what you're taking.
Gotcha. Very important. Well, I'm going to jump topics on you a little bit because I know we only got about 15 minutes or so. State budget.
Sure.
First of all, around it, we are at an impasse between the House and the Senate, and appears that it's over the issue of non-tribal casinos being allowed. There was an agreement on it. Now there's not. We have in-state betting now. I'm just curious that, I'm sure that the Medicaid expansion is tied to passing the budget. I'm just curious your thoughts around Medicaid expansion possibly not going forward because of gambling issue. Just any reaction, thoughts, how we address those kinds of things going forward to prevent this?
Honestly, I think it's disgusting. It's disgusting that the legislature is not passing it. First of all, Medicaid expansion does not have, they have already authorized it. And when they passed it, I think it was back in March, they said it will only take effect when we pass it, which was not necessary. They did not have to do that. They could have just enact it tomorrow, completely separate from the budget. And I don't really know why they've tied them together, but in the people's lives, there's just a story this week about a woman named Deanne, and she has a rare blood cancer, and her current life expectancy is up to 3 years. Like, it could be tomorrow, it could be a year from now, it could be 3 years. If she got a stem cell transplant, expectancy 20 years from now. Well, she doesn't have the cash to get a stem. She needs insurance, and that's exactly what Medicaid is, a type of insurance, and she works, so she doesn't qualify for Medicaid unless they expand. So this is an example where the legislature, they want casinos so badly that they're willing to put North Carolina on a lot of risk completely unnecessarily, because Medicaid expansion doesn't need to be in the budget. There are other things that are in the budget that need to be in the budget. Teacher pay. We've had thousands of vacancies in our, because we don't pay our teachers. We are 50th in this country. And Jeff, you're a former accountant. I don't know if there's anything like 50 when you have 50 states. 50th in the country. And the share of public education, which it absolutely is grace. So we need to be paying our teachers. I've asked for this control unit to try to get the justice. We've got a package that we developed with chiefs of police to address recruitment and retention issues for local law enforcement. There are sort of an unprecedented number of vacancies, jobs they're having trouble. And there are some strategies that we developed, and they're not all money. They all need to be enacted. And if the legislature passed their budget, teachers aren't getting paid. Our law enforcement and control unit, they're underfunded. And it's a shame because the budget's about making people's lives happier and healthier, not harder, and making our state safer and stronger, not less secure.
So that said, would you support the concept of a line item veto for the governor? And if you would, maybe give us your interpretation of what a line item veto is or would be that you would support if there is such a.
I would. Of course, it would require a constitutional to affect and constitutional amendments is a very old democracy. We were one of the original 13 colonies, and we don't have a referendum process the way that a lot of Midwestern and Western states do that came after us.
Oh, you mean like your
and
debit
so
card? Oh no, by then you'll have one.
that's that somebody.
You'll have your own by then.
No,
but
we've
mine,
got
that one
somebody
there
that's
is
not
probably
muted.
Yeah. Huh?
The odds that the General Assembly would actually do a constitutional amendment giving the governor a line item veto, I think are exceptionally low. So I'll just start with the political reality question. But I think as a matter of policy, it's a good thing because there are provisions that get put into the budget, have nothing to do with the budget, as it's sort of a take it or leave it proposition that end up being very damaging to the state. And I think that giving the governor the authority to strike those provisions is positive for the sake of the people.
I'm going to jump back to a big issue that we started addressing when we were both in the Senate, and I believe your office has been working on it. But to quote former Chief Justice Mark Martin of the North Carolina Supreme Court, justice delayed is justice denied. And I know we've had issues with the medical examiner's office and the state lab on getting rape tests and kits tested. I mean, like for years. And so no way to prosecute folks. What's being done, if anything, or can be done?
Let me tell you, to medical examiner, and then I'll talk about the rape kits. Medical examiners, of course, are necessary for autopsies. And those, it's taking about a week, but you need an autopsy report to determine whether a person died of natural causes or of homicide. And that's about 6 months to turn around. That is a real hindrance on public safety in North Carolina. I was just talking with Sheriff Charles Blackwood of Orange County about this earlier this week. And we're going to engage with the HHS secretary and the law enforcement, the chiefs and the sheriff's up. Of course, that's not under my auspices. That's under the HHS department. The state lab is under my control at the Department of Justice. And when I came into office, we didn't know how many unrated kits there were shelves of local law enforcement agencies. They weren't not in our custody. They were in the custody of the local agencies. And so we worked with the legislature. And this is, by the way, another example where the legislature worked together with my office in a bipartisan fashion, solve a pressing public policy that affected people's lives. And a lot of times media doesn't focus on when we work together because it's sort of, but sometimes government does what it's supposed to do. And the legislature worked with us. First thing we did was do a count of sad, distressing realization. We had about 16,000 of these kits, more than any other state in the country. But then we attacked it. My office developed a strategy. We came up with a tracking system so that now for anybody give over a rape kit to law enforcement, there is a barcode, and you can track on a website to know, where is my kit? Is it still at the hospital? Is it at the police department, or is it at the crime lab? Where is my kit? Because again, I said earlier in the conversation that when we have that kind of transparency, then the people to do our jobs well. We also got about 16 million in funding to outsource these kits, and we are well on our way. We're about 90% kitable have tested, and nearly 20% of kits that have been tested hit on kit connects to a person who we know the person is, which is obviously an incredible need for law enforcement to pursue these cases. And I mean, there have just been dozens and dozens and dozens of arrests that have been made across the state. There's an arrest recently in Wilmington of a sexual assault that occurred in 1995. There was one in Asheville where it was a rape and kidnapping that occurred in 1992. So these are cases that are 20, 30 years old, where finally the victim is seeing justice. And you said it, justice delayed is justice denied. What we want to do is we can't back in time. Folks deserve our best efforts. And honestly, the public deserve best efforts, because when we find these rapists and lock them up, we're taking them off streets where they can't attack anyone else. And as I said, there have been dozens of people put behind bars.
Well, Josh, you are a bit of an anomaly in that you talk about, we've worked together. You worked with Tom McGinnis, you worked with Jim Davis, other Republican senators. You continue to do that. How do we revive, or I guess cancel the cancel culture in politics, to the extent that now any idea that comes from the other side of the aisle is obviously immediately wrong? There's no collaboration or minimal. So what's up with partisanship these days, and how do we bring it back?
It's hard we're in a hard moment. I mean, I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish and just say we can, solve all of our problems, challenges in the country in terms of the dysfunction of our politics. And I think one of the root causes of it, honestly, Jeff, is gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering, because is when the party in power, which are now the Republicans, draw these maps, they draw it so that they're guaranteed to win a certain number of seats. It's just the numbers are such that it is impossible for the Democrat to win. And that means that the Republican who's running the seat doesn't care about the Democrats, and therefore doesn't care about the Democratic constituent or the independent constituent. All they care about is winning the Republican primary, because they know that once they win the Republican primary, they will be elected. So that drives all of those members to the right to win their primary. The same dynamic occurs in the Democratic districts, although there are fewer of them, are similarly very partisan. And so the Democrat says, well, I got to go to the left to win primary. And then they never worry about trying to go things done, because they get branded as a collaborator, and makes them more likely to get challenged next time down the road. Where that cannot happen is in these statewide races, like attorney general and like governor, because we run the whole state about what can we do to help. And we don't think about, is this person a Democrat or is this person well? So we have to solve this incredible cancer on our democracy of partisan gerrymandering. We had won it at the North Carolina Supreme Court, which ruled partisan gerrymandering violates our state constitution. And then this new court just decided to ignore the court 5 months earlier, which is an incredible abuse of the rule of law. So I think that our only recourse, there's no recourse in state court, there's no recourse in federal court. Our only recourse at this point is with the U.S. Congress passing a law that prohibits partisan gerrymandering across the country. An honest solution, because if there's no partisan gerrymandering in North Carolina, but there is partisan work or vice versa, that creates distortions on the political system as well. We need a uniform rule that says, and this is a pretty basic idea, Jeff, that people choose their elected representative. The elected representatives should not choose their people.
Sure. Let me ask you this then, John. Josh, we've got a few minutes left, and I'm going to ask you a couple campaign things since you're in the process of running for governor. If you're elected governor, what do you believe will be your primary focuses and priorities?
I want to become governor of the people of North Carolina and make North Carolina everything it can be. Basically, if you work hard and you do right, you should be able to get ahead, and your kids should be ahead. That's to me the basic promise of this state. And for too many people, that's not happening right now. So we need an economy that works for everybody with a first shot to succeed, whether job or start a small business. True anywhere in North Carolina, including small town North Carolina. I mean, you live in Mecklenburg, I live in Wake. Both of those counties are great. We need to make sure that that economic opportunity is more broadly distributed across the state. And that requires state investments in things like broadband, roads, railroads, ports, airports, water and sewer, just nut and bolts infrastructure. But we also have to attack high cost of living, cut taxes for working families, and we have to raise the minimum wage so that people can make work pay. So that's job one. Job two is bring public education in the state. When I say that, I'm talking about from pre-kindergarten through the college and university, because we want every who are in kindergarten to be in a place where they're healthy, where they're ready to learn, they can just start their education. And then when they graduate high school, that kid needs to have the skills and knowledge to succeed, whether they want to start a career. And we want people to say that's what they prefer. So we need career technical education. We need apprenticeship. You should have to go to college to be able to support your family and live a good life. I would say the two high priorities for me as governor.
One last question. I'm going to give you the classic debate question almost. And if you would share, and I know it's always hard to answer sometimes because you got to kind of gloat on yourself, but why are you the best choice for governor?
I love North Carolina. I love everything in the state. I love our people, and I want this state to essentially honor the promise that we make to our folks that if you do right, you can get ahead. And I've proven as AG that I take on big people and deliver. We've worked very successfully on opioids. We've worked on the sexual assault kits. We've worked on Juul, the e-cigarette company. We've worked against polluters, poison drinking water. We've defended people's fundamental rights. I've taken on big fights and won as AG. I'm going to take on big fights and deliver for them, whether it's a stronger, fairer economy, whether it's good public schools, whether it's safe neighborhoods and communities, whether it's an affordable, accessible healthcare system. There's a lot that we need to do in North Carolina to help families succeed, and I am eager to get at the work.
Well, let me share one last editorial comment on my criteria, and it doesn't fit everybody, but I think going forward, we've got to elect officials across all offices that have outstanding character, impeccable integrity, have, high intelligence, and have the experience by serving in roles prior to the job they're going to take on. I think it's hard to just say right out of college, hey, I'm applying for CEO of Atrium or Novant or Lowe's or Home Depot. It just doesn't work that way and do well. There are a dozen people or whatever the number is that's running across both parties, and most of them can't meet that criteria for me. There's a few, and you are one of them without a question or a doubt. It's nice to see outstanding people willing to serve the public, do this the right way. And again, it's an honor to have you take the time to spend with the chamber and our members this morning. I know you've got a lot going on, so I don't know if there's any closing comments or any last thought you want to leave before we sign off today.
Jeff, it's a pleasure to be with you. Great to see you, even if it's just by video. Really appreciate the invitation, and hope everybody around Lake Norman has a wonderful week.
All right, thanks. We'll let you go, Mr. Attorney General, and Bill, we'll give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Jeff, and apologize. The audio wasn't terribly good. I didn't think we had a very good internet connection with the Attorney General, and I don't know if it's possible to maybe re-record it at another date and time. But I want to recognize Mike Riley, who is also joining us by audio. Mike, you're the presenting sponsor of our Focus Friday events. We thank Novant Health, Huntersville Medical Center, for being a big part of it. Any comments on behalf of Novant?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And great comments by Attorney General Stein. Really appreciative of a lot of the work he's done, especially he talked earlier about the opioid crisis and a lot of the work that he did, over the last, 5-6 years, we've seen lots and lots of oxycodone and that kind of thing come through the ER. Because of his work and others, we've seen a decrease in that. But now, as he spoke about before, fentanyl is really hitting the hospitals. I'll give you an example. We're starting to catch people in our parking lots doing drugs, fentanyl and other things, so that they're close to the ER, so that if they do overdose, they have easy access. This is kind of running rampant now. So lots of things that are happening. He also talked about, and Jeff, you asked the question about Medicaid expansion, and I only have to think that it's put into the North Carolina budget and dependent on the budget passing as a chip of some sort, and that's unfortunate, because just like the woman that he mentioned in his comments, there are thousands of people in North Carolina that would really be able to get better access to healthcare if Medicaid expansion would pass. And I try to stay away from political, but those are things that are really important to us in healthcare. As far as COVID and that kind of thing, I know you guys like me to give you an update on what's happening there. We're seeing a resurgence of COVID, not the COVID of the Omicron and Delta waves, but it's like a flu-ish kind of COVID. And interestingly, what we're seeing is our nurses and our team members are starting to get it. So we're actually starting to do some masking on certain units in our hospital and in other hospitals if they reach a certain number of team members who have contracted COVID. So maybe not as much with patients coming in the hospital, although we are seeing those, but it's really affecting our workforce. And I'll stop talking and I'll give it back to you guys.
Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate your participation with the Focus Friday events. Jeff, October's coming up. It's a busy month for us. October the 12th, which is a Thursday, we're going to have the Cornelius Candidate Forum. We have 2 people running for mayor and 10 candidates running for commissioner. We turn around the next week on the 17th and 19th, 2 forums in Huntersville, because we have such a large field, 3 people running for mayor, 16 people running for the board. So we will have the 3 mayoral candidates and 5 commissioner candidates on the 17th, and on the 19th, the balance of the commissioners. And the election in Davidson is over. 5 people running for 5 spots, 1 person running for a mayor. Over. So
I congratulated Mayor Knox on his win.
So we'll have a meet and greet later on in the month at the Davidson Village Inn, I think on the 30th. But all of these taking place at the town halls. It is open to the public. We will have WSIC is going to be partnering with us, and they'll be broadcasting it on Facebook. Justin Kazepis is going to be our MC of those particular events. He is the owner, general manager of WSIC. And we will be going to the town hall this coming Monday, Jeff, to actually draw commissioner candidate names out of a hat. Who would be on the Tuesday, who would be on the Thursday. So it's totally impartial and at random, which ones are selected. And we have that coming up. So again, we have a busy schedule. October's Focus Friday is going to be
Congressman Dan Bishop, who has announced he is running for the seat that Josh Stein is going to be vacating. So as he is term limited for one thing, but announcement is he runs for the governor. But so Dan Bishop is our October guest. And then in November, our guest is U.S. Senator Ted Budd.
And we take December off for the Christmas holidays. So anyway, thank you very much for everybody for joining us. And we'll see you next time on our Focus Friday. Have a great weekend.